Ladies and gentlemen, your mind can be your greatest ally or your most relentless enemy. Master it, and you unlock the key to true freedom. In the vast landscape of human experience, we often look outward to identify challenges and obstacles. We blame circumstances, other people, or even fate. Yet the greatest adversary we will ever face resides not outside of us, but within the uncontrolled mind. The mind, as miraculous as it is, can be a double-edged sword. When tamed and guided, it becomes a tool for creativity, clarity, and purpose. But when left unchecked, it can spiral into chaos, pulling us into patterns of fear, doubt, and endless mental noise. The most profound battles are not fought on external battlefields, but within. Conquering the uncontrolled mind is not an act of suppression, but of understanding. And in this understanding, you will discover the peace, joy, and freedom that have always been yours. The mind is one of humanity's greatest gifts. It allows us to solve problems, create art, build relationships, and explore the mysteries of the universe. Yet this very same mind, when untamed, can become our greatest source of suffering. Its power is immense, but its influence is a double-edged sword. On one side, it can guide us to clarity, innovation, and peace. On the other, it can trap us in cycles of fear, doubt, and confusion. Understanding this dual nature is essential if we are to transcend the struggles of an uncontrolled mind. The mind operates like a tool, and like any tool, it is neither inherently good nor bad. Its value depends entirely on how it is used. Imagine holding a sharp blade in your hand. When wielded with care and precision, it can carve beautiful shapes or help you cut through barriers. But when left to its own devices, it can cause harm, slicing without purpose or control. This is how the mind functions when disciplined. It enables progress. When left unchecked, it can wreak havoc. An uncontrolled mind tends to operate in extremes. It drifts toward either overactivity or inertia. In overactivity, the mind becomes consumed by thoughts, endlessly replaying past events or rehearsing for imagined futures. This state of mental chatter often leads to stress, anxiety, and an inability to focus. On the other hand, inertia manifests as stagnation, feeling stuck in cycles of indecision, procrastination, or lethargy. In both cases, the mind loses its connection to the present moment, pulling you into states of suffering and dissatisfaction. This dynamic creates an illusion that our thoughts define who we are. When the mind is chaotic, it convinces us that the turmoil is permanent, that we are helpless in the face of its demands. For many, this sense of helplessness becomes a way of life. It feels as though the mind is running the show, dictating emotions, behaviors, and perceptions. Yet this is far from the truth. The uncontrolled mind is not a reflection of our true essence, but rather a result of neglecting the power we hold over it. The mind's greatest weakness lies in its inability to remain still. It thrives on movement, flitting from thought to thought, attaching itself to stories and judgments. This restlessness is often mistaken for productivity or intelligence. However, the busier the mind, the less clarity it possesses. Clarity arises not from the accumulation of thoughts, but from the ability to discern which thoughts are worth engaging with and which are not. This discernment is absent in an uncontrolled mind, leading to impulsive decisions, emotional reactivity, and a lack of peace. When the mind is unchecked, it can also amplify negative emotions. A single worry can spiral into a storm of anxiety. A fleeting moment of anger can grow into resentment. The mind magnifies these emotions by feeding them with stories, assumptions, and fears. Left unexamined, this process creates a self-perpetuating loop where the mind generates suffering and then reacts to that suffering with more thoughts, deepening the cycle. Within this challenge lies an opportunity. The very fact that the mind is malleable means it can be trained. Just as a wild horse can be tamed through patience and skill, so too can the mind be guided towards stillness and purpose. The first step is awareness, recognizing the patterns of the uncontrolled mind without judgment. Awareness creates space, and in that space we gain the ability to choose. Instead of being dragged along by the mind's winds, we can pause, observe, and redirect its focus. This process is not about suppressing the mind or eliminating thoughts. Suppression only creates resistance, which strengthens the mind's grip. Instead, it is about cultivating a relationship of cooperation. By learning to work with the mind rather than against it, we transform it from an adversary into an ally. The mind's energy, once scattered, becomes concentrated, enabling it to serve our highest intentions. The dual nature of the mind reflects the duality within all of us. We are both the thinker and the observer, the creator and the created. To harness the power of the mind is to embrace this duality with compassion and wisdom. It is to recognize that the uncontrolled mind is not an enemy to be defeated, but a force to be understood and guided. In this understanding, we find freedom not by escaping the mind, but by mastering it. And in mastering it, we unlock the vast potential that lies within us all. Awareness is the foundation of transformation. Without it, the mind remains in its habitual state, driven by unconscious patterns and reactive tendencies. Awareness is not simply paying attention, it is a deeper state of being where one observes without judgment, sees without distortion, and becomes present to the reality of what is. It is the light that illuminates the workings of the mind, allowing us to see clearly its movements, influences, and the ways it can lead us astray when left unchecked. To tame the mind, the first and most crucial step is recognizing its nature. The mind is constantly active, generating thoughts, judgments, and narratives that shape how we perceive the world. But awareness reveals something profound. We are not the thoughts we think. We are the observer of those thoughts. This distinction is transformative. When you realize you are the awareness behind the mind, you begin to disidentify from the mental chatter that often consumes your attention. Awareness acts as a mirror, reflecting the mind's activity back to you. In doing so, it creates a space between you and the thought patterns that have long dictated your experience. This space is liberating because it allows for choice. Instead of being swept away by the current of your thoughts, you can pause, reflect, and decide whether to engage with them or let them pass. This is the beginning of mastery over the mind. The mind thrives in the absence of awareness, flourishing in automaticity and unconsciousness. In this state, it operates on autopilot, replaying the same fears, judgments, and stories that often lead to unnecessary suffering. For example, when a challenging situation arises, the unaware mind might immediately react with anger or frustration, creating a cascade of emotions that cloud judgment and intensify the problem. However, with awareness, you can step back and observe the emotion without becoming entangled in it. You might notice, anger is arising without identifying with it or acting impulsively. This observation alone has the power to dissipate the emotion's intensity and prevent it from controlling your actions. Awareness also brings clarity to the illusions created by the mind. Many of the thoughts that dominate our mental landscape are not rooted in reality, but are instead projections, assumptions, or distortions. The mind is adept at creating stories about who we are, what others think of us, and what the future holds. These stories often go unquestioned, yet they shape our emotions and behaviors profoundly. Awareness allows us to step back and ask, is this true? This simple question can unravel the hold that unexamined beliefs have over us, freeing us from their grip. The practice of awareness is not confined to formal meditation or moments of stillness. It is a state of being that can be cultivated in every moment. Whether you are walking, eating, or speaking with someone, awareness invites you to be fully present, to notice not only what is happening around you, but also within you. What thoughts are arising? What emotions are you feeling? How is your body reacting? This gentle observation brings you into direct contact with life as it is, rather than as the mind interprets it to be. Awareness does not suppress the mind, it transforms it. The mind's restlessness, when met with presence, begins to settle naturally. Imagine a pond that has been disturbed by constant ripples. As the wind of distraction dies down, the water becomes still, and its surface reflects the world around it with perfect clarity. Similarly, when the mind is brought into the light of awareness, it becomes calm, focused, and aligned with the deeper intelligence of your being. This process requires patience and persistence. The mind will resist at first, pulling you back into old habits of reactivity and distraction.
but every moment of awareness strengthens your ability to remain present.
Over time, this practice rewires your relationship with the mind, allowing you to respond to life with wisdom and grace rather than impulsivity and fear. Awareness is not about controlling the mind but understanding it. It is about cultivating a harmonious relationship where the mind becomes a tool for creativity and insight rather than a source of turmoil. Awareness invites you to embrace the mind with compassion, to see its activity for what it is without judgment or resistance. In this embrace, the mind's power is no longer destructive but constructive, no longer chaotic but purposeful. Through awareness, you reclaim your role as the master of your inner world, guiding the mind with clarity and intention. This is the essence of taming the mind and the key to inner freedom. The mind, when left uncontrolled, becomes a relentless source of inner turmoil, pulling us away from the peace and stillness that is our natural state. Inner peace does not arise from external circumstances, but from the clarity and balance within. Yet the uncontrolled mind disrupts this balance, filling the space of calm with noise, restlessness, and emotional turbulence. The impact of this chaos on our well-being is profound, often going unnoticed because we become so accustomed to it. An uncontrolled mind is like a stormy sea. Waves of worry, regret, and doubt crash relentlessly, creating a sense of instability and unease. These mental storms are self-perpetuating. A single worry may trigger another, spiraling into a cascade of negative thoughts. The mind magnifies small concerns into overwhelming fears, making problems appear insurmountable. This lack of clarity prevents us from seeing solutions, and instead we become entangled in the web of our own thoughts. Beyond the immediate effects, the long-term consequences of an uncontrolled mind can be even more damaging. Chronic mental unrest leads to stress, which has well-documented impacts on physical health, including weakened immunity, increased risk of heart disease, and disrupted sleep. It also affects our emotional resilience, leaving us more susceptible to feelings of anxiety, depression, and overwhelm. When the mind remains untamed, the cumulative weight of this unrest creates a state of perpetual discontent. What makes this all the more challenging is that the mind often tricks us into believing that its activity is productive. It tells us that worrying is preparation, that reliving past mistakes is a way to learn, and that planning for every possible outcome is necessary. But this is a deception. True preparation, learning, and planning come not from frantic overthinking, but from a calm and focused mind. The uncontrolled mind, instead of helping us navigate life, keeps us trapped in cycles of fear and frustration. The mind's tendency to dwell on the past and future is one of its primary ways of disrupting inner peace. It clings to past events, replaying them endlessly, and attaches itself to imagined futures, creating scenarios of either hope or fear. In doing so, it pulls us away from the only moment we truly have, the present. This disconnection from the present moment is the root cause of much of our suffering. When the mind is lost in time, peace becomes unattainable because we are not fully here to experience it. Peace is always present beneath the surface of the mind's activity, like the stillness at the bottom of the ocean beneath turbulent waves. The task is not to create peace, but to uncover it by quieting the mind and removing the layers of mental noise that obscure it. One of the ways to counteract the impact of the uncontrolled mind is through the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness brings us back to the present moment, where the mind's power to disturb diminishes. By focusing on the here and now, on the sensation of the breath, the sounds around us, or the simple act of being, we create a gap in the mind's relentless activity. In this gap, peace emerges naturally. Important step is developing awareness of the mind's patterns. When we notice how the mind pulls us into unnecessary worries or judgments, we can begin to disentangle ourselves from these patterns. This awareness doesn't stop the thoughts from arising, but it prevents them from taking over. By observing thoughts without judgment, we weaken their grip and reduce their ability to disturb our inner calm. The uncontrolled mind may seem like an insurmountable force, but it is not. It is a habit, and like any habit, it can be changed with practice and patience. As we learn to quiet the mind and anchor ourselves in the present moment, we reconnect with the peace that has always been within us. This peace is not something the mind can create, it is something we uncover when we step beyond the mind's constant chatter. Inner peace is not a distant goal, but a state that becomes accessible when we no longer allow the uncontrolled mind to dominate our experience. By recognizing the mind's impact on our peace and taking steps to guide it towards stillness, we reclaim the calm and clarity that are the essence of a balanced and harmonious life. The thoughts we entertain have a profound impact on the reality we experience. Our perception of the world is not an objective reflection of what is happening, but a lens shaped by the mind's interpretations, judgments, and narratives. Thoughts act as the architects of our inner and outer worlds, influencing not only how we feel, but also how we respond to life's circumstances. By understanding this, we can begin to see how the quality of our thoughts determines the quality of our reality. The mind is processing information, assigning meaning, and generating narratives. This mental activity creates a filter through which we view the world. Two people can experience the same situation yet perceive it entirely differently based on their thoughts. For instance, if someone cuts you off in traffic, your thoughts about the event, whether they involve anger, forgiveness, or indifference, will dictate your emotional response and the rest of your experience in that moment. The event itself is neutral. It is your thoughts that give it meaning. When the mind is left unchecked, it often gravitates toward patterns of negativity and fear. These tendencies are rooted in the brain's evolutionary design, which prioritizes survival over happiness. The mind scans for threats, real or imagined, and amplifies them. This negativity bias can lead to a distorted perception of reality, where challenges appear larger than they are, and moments of joy are overshadowed by worry or doubt. Over time, these patterns shape not only how we see the world, but also how we move through it. If you frequently think, "I am not good enough," this belief begins to influence your actions and interactions. You may hesitate to take opportunities, withdraw from connections, or interpret neutral situations as judgments against you. These behaviors reinforce the original thought, creating a self-fulfilling cycle. In this way, thoughts do not just reflect our reality, they actively shape it. The mind's power lies in its ability to project thoughts outward, turning them into actions and experiences. When thoughts are rooted in fear or scarcity, they create a reality of limitation. Conversely, thoughts grounded in positivity and possibility can open doors to growth and fulfillment. This is not about blind optimism or wishful thinking, but about recognizing the creative potential of the mind and using it intentionally. To understand the influence of thoughts, consider the role of expectations. When we expect failure, our thoughts often focus on obstacles, doubts, and reasons why something will not work. This focus affects our behavior, leading us to approach tasks with hesitation or minimal effort. The outcome, unsurprisingly, aligns with our expectations, reinforcing the original thought. On the other hand, when we expect success, our thoughts turn towards solutions, opportunities, and the steps needed to achieve our goals. This positive mental framework inspires confidence and action, increasing the likelihood of a favorable outcome. The relationship between thoughts and reality extends beyond individual experiences to encompass how we perceive others and the world at large. When the mind harbors thoughts of judgment or hostility, it projects those feelings outward, coloring our interactions. A person who believes people cannot be trusted will approach relationships with suspicion, often creating the very dynamics they fear. In contrast, thoughts of openness and understanding foster trust and connection, leading to more harmonious interactions. While it is clear that thoughts shape reality, it is important to recognize that not all thoughts are true or worth engaging with. The mind generates an endless stream of ideas, many of which are repetitive, unhelpful, or outright false. Without awareness, we can become entangled in these thoughts, mistaking them for truth. However, by observing the mind with curiosity and detachment, we gain the ability to question our thoughts and choose which ones to act upon. Shaping reality through thoughts requires a practice of mindfulness and intentionality. Mindfulness helps us become aware of the thoughts we are entertaining and the impact they are having on our emotions and actions. Intentionality allows us to guide our thinking in ways that align with our values and aspirations. This does not mean suppressing negative thoughts, but rather acknowledging them without allowing them to dominate our mental landscape. The transformative power of thoughts lies in their fluidity. Unlike external circumstances which may be beyond our control, our thoughts are within our reach to change. By consciously cultivating thoughts of gratitude, compassion, and possibility, we begin to shift the lens through which we see the world. This shift does not erase challenges, but equips us with the mindset needed to face them with resilience and clarity. When we understand how thoughts shape reality, we reclaim a vital aspect of our power. We are no longer passive recipients of life's circumstances, but active participants in creating our experience. The mind becomes a canvas, and our thoughts the brushstrokes that bring our vision to life. With awareness and intention, we can paint a reality that reflects the deepest truths of who we are and what we value. The present moment is the only reality we ever truly have, yet the uncontrolled mind spends much of its time anywhere but here, reliving the past or imagining the future. This constant mental wandering creates a disconnection from the richness of the now, which is where life actually unfolds. The power of the present moment lies in its ability to anchor us in truth, free us from unnecessary mental noise, and reveal the profound peace and clarity that exists when we are fully present. The mind has a tendency to cling to the past. It revisits memories, analyzes them, and often attaches judgments about what should or should not have happened. This fixation creates regret, guilt, or longing as we try to rewrite what is already gone. The mind projects itself into the future, imagining outcomes, crafting expectations, or anticipating fears. While some planning is practical, excessive focus on the future creates anxiety and a sense of unease about things that may never come to pass. In both cases, the mind pulls us away from the present, where life is happening. When we are disconnected from the present, we lose touch with the simplicity and beauty of being. Consider moments of natural wonder, a sunset, the sound of rain, or the laughter of a loved one. These experiences are inherently fulfilling, but only when we are fully present to them. If the mind is occupied with thoughts of the past or future, these moments pass unnoticed, leaving us with a sense of emptiness. This disconnection is not because life lacks meaning, but because we are not fully there to experience it. The present moment is not just a refuge from mental noise, it is the gateway to clarity. When we are present, the mind quiets and we begin to see things as they are, rather than through the lens of judgments and narratives. This clarity allows us to respond to situations with wisdom rather than react out of habit. For example, when faced with a challenge, being present enables us to assess the reality of the situation and take thoughtful action. In contrast, an uncontrolled mind might magnify the problem or generate unnecessary worry, clouding our ability to act effectively. One of the most powerful aspects of the present moment is its ability to free us from time-bound thinking. The past and future exist only as concepts in the mind. They are not real, in the sense that we can touch or experience them directly. By grounding ourselves in the now, we release the grip of these mental constructs and connect with the timeless essence of life. This connection brings a sense of peace that transcends circumstances because it is not dependent on anything external. Accessing the present moment does not require special skills or conditions. It is always available. One way to reconnect with the now is through the breath. The breath is a constant rhythm, always occurring in the present. By bringing attention to the sensation of breathing, we naturally anchor ourselves in the moment. This practice is simple yet profoundly effective, as it redirects the mind from its habitual patterns and into a state of awareness. The pathway to the present is the practice of mindful observation. This involves fully engaging with whatever you are doing, whether it's eating, walking, or simply sitting in silence. By paying attention to the details, the taste of food, the feel of the ground beneath your feet, or the sounds around you, you draw the mind back to the immediacy of the experience. This level of presence transforms even mundane activities into sources of joy and meaning. It's important to note that being present does not mean ignoring the past or future. Reflection and planning have their place, but they are most effective when done consciously from a state of presence. When we reflect on the past with awareness, we learn without becoming trapped in regret. When we plan for the future from a place of calm, we prepare without becoming consumed by fear or expectation. The present moment becomes the foundation from which we engage with time rather than being swept away by it. Cultivating presence is a practice, and like any practice, it requires patience and persistence. The mind will inevitably wander and distractions will arise. The key is not to resist or judge these tendencies, but to gently bring your attention back to the now. Each time you do, you strengthen your ability to remain present, and over time, this state of being becomes more natural. The power of the present moment lies in its ability to free us from the limitations of the uncontrolled mind. It is here, in the now, that we find peace, clarity, and a profound sense of connection to life. When we live in the present, we are no longer prisoners of our thoughts, but participants in the unfolding reality of existence. This is where true liberation begins, and where the fullness of life becomes available to us. Self-awareness is the cornerstone of personal freedom. Without it, we remain at the mercy of the mind's unexamined patterns and impulses, unaware of how they influence our emotions, decisions, and behaviors. To observe the mind is to step into the role of the witness, a space of quiet recognition where you see thoughts and emotions for what they are without identifying with them. This simple yet profound shift in perspective creates a pathway to liberation, allowing you to disengage from the habitual mental cycles that often lead to unnecessary suffering. When you begin to observe your mind, you start noticing its incessant activity. Thoughts come and go like clouds in the sky, often unbidden and repetitive. Some of these thoughts may be benign, but others carry the weight of judgment, fear, or attachment. Without awareness, you might find yourself lost in these thoughts, mistaking them for reality. Observing the mind breaks this illusion by revealing that you are not the thinker, you are the one who observes the thinking. This realization is transformative because it introduces a critical distance between you and your mental activity. In this role as the observer, you notice not only the content of your thoughts, but also the patterns underlying them. You may see how the mind tends to dwell on past regrets, anticipate future anxieties, or replay narratives about your identity and worth.
These patterns often operate unconsciously, driving behaviors and emotions without your explicit consent. By bringing them into awareness, you expose their influence and create the possibility of choice.
For instance, when you observe a pattern of self-doubt arising before a challenge, you can recognize it as a habitual response rather than a reflection of your actual ability. Also brings clarity to the emotional landscape shaped by the mind. Emotions are deeply intertwined with thoughts. They feed into one another, creating a feedback loop that can amplify distress. A single thought of failure can spark feelings of inadequacy, which in turn fuel more self-critical thoughts. When you observe this process without judgment, you interrupt the cycle. You might notice, there is a feeling of sadness without labeling it as bad or trying to suppress it. This non-judgmental observation allows the emotion to unfold naturally, often dissipating faster than if you had resisted or indulged it. A key aspect of observing the mind is cultivating curiosity. Instead of resisting or trying to control your thoughts, approach them with a sense of wonder. What is the mind doing now? What stories is it telling? What beliefs is it clinging to? This attitude transforms the act of observation into an exploration rather than a struggle. It allows you to see the mind's workings without being pulled into its drama. Over time, this practice builds a sense of detachment that frees you from the grip of mental turbulence. Through observation, you begin to recognize the impermanence of thoughts and emotions. They arise, linger for a while, and eventually pass away, much like waves on the surface of the ocean. This awareness is liberating because it reveals that no mental state is permanent, no matter how intense it may feel in the moment. By observing this transient nature, you cultivate a sense of equanimity, a deep inner calm that remains undisturbed by the mind's fluctuations. Observation is not about suppressing or eliminating thoughts, but about seeing them clearly. The mind will continue to generate ideas, judgments, and reactions, but they lose their power when you stop identifying with them. Instead of being swept away by anger, you might notice anger is present and choose to respond rather than react. Instead of being consumed by worry, you might observe the mind is imagining a negative outcome and redirect your attention to what is actually happening. This practice of observing the mind does not require hours of formal meditation. It can be integrated into everyday life. When a strong emotion arises, take a moment to pause and observe it. When a thought pulls your attention away from the present moment, notice it and gently bring your focus back. Even in simple activities like walking or eating, you can observe how the mind engages with the experience, whether it is fully present or lost in distractions. The act of observing the mind is both humbling and empowering. It reveals the sheer volume and variety of mental activity, but it also shows you that you are not confined by it. You have the ability to step back, to witness, and ultimately to choose how you engage with your thoughts. This freedom is the essence of mastery over the mind. It allows you to navigate life with greater clarity, intentionality, and peace. When you observe the mind, you reclaim your role as the conscious creator of your experience. You are no longer a passive recipient of the mind's narratives, but an active participant in shaping your reality. This shift transforms not only your relationship with your thoughts, but also your relationship with life itself. It opens the door to a deeper sense of presence, purpose, and inner freedom. As we bring this journey to a close, let us reflect on the profound truth that has been unfolding throughout our exploration. The greatest barrier to our peace, clarity, and fulfillment is not the external world, but the unchecked activity of our own minds. The uncontrolled mind, with its relentless chatter and habitual patterns, can cloud our perception, rob us of the present moment, and trap us in cycles of suffering. Yet within this challenge lies an extraordinary opportunity, the chance to reclaim mastery over our inner world. The mind is not our enemy, it is a powerful tool. But like any tool, it must be wielded with awareness and intention. When we learn to observe our thoughts, detach from their grip, and guide them toward truth and presence, we unlock the freedom that has always been within us. We discover that peace is not something to be found in the distant future, but something that arises naturally when we quiet the noise and return to the now. The present moment is our anchor, the only reality we truly possess. It is here that life unfolds, and it is here that we can connect with the stillness and clarity that reside beyond the mind's endless narratives. In this stillness, we are no longer victims of our thoughts, but creators of our experience. We find the strength to shape our reality, the wisdom to choose love over fear, and the courage to embrace life fully. Let this be your call to action, not to battle the mind, but to understand it, observe it, and ultimately transcend its limitations. The journey begins with awareness and unfolds through practice, patience, and self-compassion. As you cultivate this mastery, you will not only transform your inner world, but also radiate peace and clarity into the lives of those around you. The mind may be a powerful force, but it is not who you are. Beneath the noise lies the essence of your being, limitless, free, and deeply connected to the flow of life. Trust in this truth and let it guide you forward. May you walk the path of awareness with grace, discovering the profound liberation that comes from knowing your mind without being ruled by it.